Have you ever known anyone who had the Midas touch? You know, that person who has the uncanny ability to turn anything they touch into success. The phrase the Midas touch stems from the Greek myth about King Midas, who turned everything he touched into gold. Doesn't that sound like a great blessing? I mean, can you imagine all the happiness that would come to you, or all the good you could do if everything you touched turned to gold? Well, that is exactly what King Midas thought, until he soon discovered that this blessing could also be a curse. As he watched food and drink, and even his own daughter, turn to gold. What was once thought to bring him the greatest happiness had become the very thing that brought him his greatest misery. The story of King Midas is a myth that teaches us to be careful with what we wish for. It's a story about tragedy of greed, and also the harmful cost of placing the accumulation of wealth and possessions and power above everything else. And maybe this is the moral of today's gospel as well, that life's true value isn't found but in the richness of our relationship with God and in our generosity toward others. Our gospel story begins with Jesus teaching in front of a large crowd of people. Someone in the crowd stands up and asks Jesus to settle a dispute over a family inheritance. Now, the gospel doesn't provide any context or any background information about who this person is or what the circumstances are that this request has come. But no matter what the situation is, Jesus does not engage in the dispute. Instead, he responds with a warning. He says, "Take care. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Which means that life is not defined by what you have, even if you have a lot. The parable is about a farmer who produced a bountiful harvest. And he ends up with more grain than he knows what to do with. And so he plans to build a large barn to store up his bounty. And he believes that his bounty will secure his future. He tells himself, "Relax, eat, drink, be merry, because I have a lot of goods, and I've laid them up for myself for many years to come." But God doesn't see it that way. God calls the farmer a fool, not because he's rich. He calls him a fool because he has deceived himself into thinking that all his bounty and all his goods that he has turned into gold will ultimately lead to his happiness and his fulfillment. I know in myself how easy it is to make the mistake of believing that having more, whether it's more money, more affluence, more comfortable circumstances, more, if we just had it, it would solve everything. We have and we will always have a complicated and tantalizing relationship with money and possessions. And like the Midas touch, money and possessions can be and often are both a blessing and a curse. They can be our greatest gifts, but they can also be our greatest burdens. For example, we need money and things to survive, right? We need resources to live on and to prosper in the world. We need money to run our church and to run businesses and to run schools and to run hospitals. And as such, money and possessions and wealth are not bad in themselves. They are not evil in themselves. In fact, money and wealth and influence can help make good things possible that might otherwise be impossible. They can provide comfort and aid to those in need. They can help open doors where doors have been shut. They can help create greater opportunities for not only for ourselves, but for others. But they can also be hazardous, especially if we place too much value on them. It is not our money or our wealth or our personal effects that are the problem. It is our attachment to them. We can fool ourselves into buying into the false assumption that the accumulation of things are keys to my happiness and my well-being. While our belongings can bring comfort and ease to our lives and even boost our self-confidence, they will always fall short in providing true and lasting significance and self-worth. And like the farmer in the parable, our attachments can consume us. They can lead us into an endless cycle of greed, an endless and insatiable desire, believing that having more will satisfy us. But the truth is, more is never enough. If I just had that, or this, or that, if I just had more, one more thing, it would all be good. But what happens when you get it? Ooh, that would be good, right? It never is enough. Greed is driven by a deep-rooted sense of insecurity and fear about not having enough, or more importantly, not being enough. And greed in any form, whether it's greedy for wealth, power, reputation, validation, knowledge, food, approval, or desire to have what your next door neighbor has, all of it will always lead to our undoing, because greed is never satisfied by what it desires. I'm going to say that again. Greed is never satisfied by what it desires. It will always cause us to want more. The spiritual problem of wealth is that we can anchor our hearts too firmly on things that can't deliver on what they promise, on things that leave us wanting more and that tempt us into believing that we are somehow inadequate or somehow not enough in ourselves. And this dance between wealth and greed is tricky. And the gospel reminds us about this slippery slope that we can easily fall down. And Jesus says, take care. He says, be careful to avoid being tricked by all kinds of greed and hungers and cravings, for your life means more than just your prized possessions. Have you ever mistakenly given your heart to, or dedicated yourself to, or devoted yourself to something that you later learned could not deliver on what it promised? Have you ever been blindsided or taken in by your possessions? What situations or what circumstances cause you to feel like you don't have enough, or that you are not enough, or that you need more? How do you distinguish between what you need and what you want? My friends, your life is more than an abundance of possessions. It is worth more than money and riches can buy. And what really matters in life, the stuff that can deliver on what it promises, the stuff that does give true and lasting happiness, is not being rich in things, but by being rich in God, rich toward God. And being rich toward God means striking that right balance between what we want and what we need. It means not misplacing the pursuit of material things to the neglect of more meaningful and important aspects of life. It means working on whatever void is there in your life so you don't have to try to fill that with things that can be hazardous to your health. Maybe we can get untangled or find this right balance between our needs and wants by nurturing a deeper trust in God's ability to provide for every essential thing we would ever need in order to be happy, fulfilled, and prosperous. That to trust God has already endowed you with all the necessary resources, strength, and support to achieve the life He desires for you. That it's already been given to you. The key to living a full life does not start with storing up treasures for yourself, but in being rich toward God and being rich toward what matters most to God. Being rich and reflecting God's complete and total love. Rich in character, rich in your principles and beliefs, rich in showing compassion, rich in friendship, rich in generosity. Being rich in showing unconditional positive regard for other people. Being rich in building understanding. Being rich in overcoming differences. Being rich in helping others that are less fortunate than you. That's what matters most to God. The parable of the rich fool invites us to examine what we are living for. What brings us real and lasting happiness, and what we consider to be the most important thing in life. May you live your life so richly toward God that all your blessings and all your abundance God can take and use as a blessing and as abundance for others. May this be so. Amen.